GDAC WCE. And today's session is going to be exhilarating and exciting, something that's going to fuel you up to find your niche and interest. Go ask your buddy didis and bhaiyas about their college days, and you all are going to hear is one thing: splendid 4 years of fun, excitement, and freedom. There is no question that college is a lot of fun. Staying up till dawn talking to your friends, reveling in the chaos of cramming for midterms and end term examinations, and discovering ways to appreciate that mess ka khana and that pani wali dal. Isn't it amusing? Well, it's more than just amusement. Rather, it's 4 years of discovering yourself, finding who you truly are. But somewhere in the college rat race, we tend to forget about it and focus on academics. We might get great CGPAs on the mark sheet, but are unable to find our interest and, most importantly, our opportunity beyond academics. Today, we have a special guest with us for a Q&A session, one who I think found her opportunity beyond academics. Please welcome Miss Vaishnavi Dwivedi. Hi, Vaishnavi. To be honest, you don't need an introduction, but what if you just introduce yourself in brief to the audience?
Sure. I am Vaishnavi. To give some context, I'm in fourth year of college, so not really experienced that much, but yeah, I suppose I'm in fourth year of college of engineering, and I currently am building a community experience called Michi Spotlight, and it has been a great experience building a community for students to navigate their careers in tech. Other than that, I'm a GitHub campus expert and former GDSC lead, as you can probably see from my T-shirt. Uh, I think that is more than sufficient for now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Looking forward to the session.
Good evening, Vaishnavi. This is Ekagra this side from GDSC BSITR. I'm the management executive here. Same here. We all are looking forward for this session. I hope you are enjoying it. My question to you is, like, you chose development and technology as your opportunity beyond academia. So what inspired to pursue it?
I wouldn't say that development and technology is totally outside academia for me, because I am pursuing computer science. So yes, like a lot of the stuff is being taught in college. Although I did not learn anything from my college lectures. I think most of us can relate to that, right? I mean, you don't learn things from college, that require a lot of technical expertise, I would say, especially when it comes to programming and development and all of those things. Even if you go to IITs or BITS or the tier one colleges as we know it, even those colleges, they don't provide education as, it's not something that is like very unique to them, because I mean they are studying the same subjects as us. The reason why they are, obviously they have that kind of opportunity, and they are ahead of us in some way or the other, because they have that kind of alumni network where they can connect with relevant folks, and just try to understand what it is that they want to do other than academics. Because a lot of times we don't know what we want to do, right? When we come to first year in engineering, we have no idea what we're doing, because we're just like, oh, computer engineering, yeah, that has a lot of placement, so let me just go into this. So I would say that, at least for me, technology was not something that I decided on pursuing during my engineering. I want to do that beforehand. It's not like I wanted to do it as engineering. I wanted to, I wanted to be an innovator. That was my main goal. It was not necessarily an engineer. I knew that I couldn't do mechanical and electrical and all of those things, because I mean, I can't. That is not my forte. So, that's why I chose computer science, because I thought that computer engineering, to be precise, and it sort of helped me get a degree so that I can be relevant in the industry. That's all. That's literally all it's providing me. But other than that, I would say that like when it comes to like a degree or like engineering and stuff like that, you try to you try to gain that experience that is like secondary to your engineering. So it's not like Nirmit also pointed out that you're basically like networking and connecting with different people, right? You're there to make friends. Why do people still consider engineering relevant even after statistics show that most people who pursue engineering, they don't end up doing engineering at the end of it, right? I mean, we all know that. We've seen YouTube videos by engineers who are basically turned into comedians and other things. So the reason why it's still relevant and people still consider it as a good option is because, and the reason I'm talking about engineering is because I'm assuming that we are all engineers here. And more than that, I think it is like one of the most popular degrees being pursued in India at this point. So I would say that engineering is like engineering offers way more than a degree. So like every experience that surrounds it, maybe like you met someone who might be a co-founder in the future, or you learned a new skill from someone else. It's not necessarily about learning things from teachers. Teachers are just there to give you assignments and take your vivas and make your life hell, basically. Not, I'm just kidding. Obviously, they help as well at certain points. I mean, I'm not going to generalize teaching as a bad thing in India. I would say there are good teachers as well. But other than that, I feel that it's a whole package, right? You have to focus on things that are also important outside of your education, because if you don't do that, you won't be relevant in today's society and in today's industry. The reason for that is, like, now I am in fourth year, right? So I know that how people are doing now. I know how they're like turning up now after like 4 years of doing stuff. Even though we spent more than 2 years at home, stuck at home, so I don't know much about stuff, but how college life pans out. But I at least went to college for 1 year, right? So I know that okay, there is something there. There is an appeal to it, definitely. But I would say that engineering is more about, let's say, the secondary experiences that you do. So yeah, like I would say that I mean the secondary activities definitely matter a lot, and that is why it is still currently a degree that is considered to be valuable in India. And when we are in first year, we usually don't have an idea what we want to do, right? We just like, okay, we just want to do something, and we just want to like just keep moving. That's all. We don't want to stop and think. That's why not a lot of people take drop years or something like that, to just like take 1 year and consider very hard what exactly it is that they want to do. So during the course of these 4 years, it is your time to sort of understand what it is that you want to do. And when it comes to people who like are in fourth year right now with me, I know how they are doing, right? Some of them, they had 10 CGPAs all 4 years. Now they are getting a placement of around 10 lakhs per annum or something like that. And that might be impressive. I guess it is impressive, honestly. But for someone like me, I don't think that is a metric for success, right? Like the kind of package that you've gotten. And I really feel that if they had focused on more things apart from their 10 CGPA, they would have gotten a much better package. Like, as you all know, like people in the industry, they get like 22 lakhs, and like Microsoft and like these FANG companies, they offer so much more than 10 lakhs per annum, right? So, but then this person, like I'm talking about one person in mind. Obviously I can't say their name because you all don't know them, right? So, I mean, this person, if this person would have, done that extra, work, then they would have gone very long ahead in life. But they're stuck now with the 10 lakh package, which is fine, I guess. But I guess that, if we had that kind of exposure, that kind of, advantage and opportunities available to us, we could have done better. So yeah, like, I mean, I know that this is like sort of deviating with the point and everything, but I'm just trying to like set up some context for the session as a whole. So yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah.
it.
So in short, these 4 years are years in which you're gonna build yourself from inside. What you teach yourself, what skills you learn, how well you perform, other than your academics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
More
So
than your academics, not just other than your academics, because academics do matter. I'm just gonna say that from experience, academics matters. Okay, if you have a low GPA, it will matter at some point. If it's very low, okay, and if you're trying to do something that is relevant to like what it is that you want to do. So let's say if you want to do masters, your GPA would matter then. It will matter a lot more than anything else. So yeah, I mean that's just the downside of it. So don't completely neglect it, but treat it as a holistic experience. That is all I'm saying.
like we have to manage your cats as well as your skills. Well,
Yeah.
that's great. And now
Yep.
coming to the main question of mine, like college is one of the best places you discover who you are. You know, you discover your interest, your niche. So, how do you identify your niche, nurture it, and locate your opportunities?
Right. So it is actually not that straightforward. Okay. Like, um, so if you, I mean, if you are in college, and I would like to sort of disagree with the that college is the best place to discover yourself, because I mean people who like I mentioned before, people take drop years to understand what they want to do, right? And not everyone has a luxury to do a 4-year degree and waste all of their money in that 4-year degree and then end up doing something completely different, right? So if that is the case, then I mean you have to be like, I mean college is definitely a good place to explore, but I mean, from the experience that we have gotten for the past 2 years, like we've been stuck at home and we've not been getting any, that solid college experience in these 2 years. So I would say that it is possible to explore without college as well, without going to college or without like doing stuff. But I would just say that I think college definitely provides you with different opportunities. At least some colleges do, some colleges don't, and in that case you need to have that kind of mindset to create opportunities on your own. Because when I entered my college, they didn't have a DSC. They had technical committees, I would say, not communities. They had technical committees, but they did not teach what technical skills we should do, acquire and stuff. So I mean it was basically like a waste of time and waste of money, right? So if there is no opportunity, or if there are no good opportunities in your college, you have to have that, that kind of passion and that kind of initiative in yourself to create these opportunities. And there are so many different platforms to do so. But coming to the question that you asked, I would say that if you really want to explore what you have to do, it doesn't matter what it is that you want to do, because at the end of the day it might reveal itself. But in order to get to that point, you need to understand what it is that you don't want to do. So if let's say I am exploring different domains that there are in tech, if let's say I'm doing cybersecurity and like I did it for a month and I did not like it, and I tried everything but I just did not like it, so I just cross it out completely. I'm like, okay, this is something that I'm not interested in, so I would not want to pursue it any further, right? So I mean, I think through that process of elimination, it is a good way to understand what it is that you don't want to do, and then eventually you will understand that what are the things that genuinely interest you. Because once you've done those things that don't interest you, you know what interests you, because you get that kind of rush when you're doing those things. You're like, okay, yeah, this is so much better than that thing that was like completely not for me. Even though like there are people who are doing the same thing and they're doing extremely well in those things. I'm basically looking at software engineering right now. Like a lot of people pursue software engineering and they're doing great in that field, but a lot of us we don't necessarily are, we're not necessarily good at DSA. Some of us are not good at DSA, or maybe we are good at DSA, but we don't want to solve 400 problems, right? We want to do something that is exciting. So in that case, it's better to rule out things that you don't want to do or you don't like to do, and then try to do things that you do like to do, but try to do something. Don't just rule out things completely just by saying that, okay, this is no, I don't like this, I don't like that, just because of the fact that you're not willing to put in the effort. Effort should not be a cause to rule out something. It should be, let's say, maybe a lack of interest, maybe like, and the only way you can identify the potential cause of your dislike for a certain domain is by exploring it a little bit in depth. You can't just like do cybersecurity courses for 1 day, 1 hour or something like that and be like, oh, this is very boring, let me just do something. Exactly, I'm done, that's it, and not doing this again. So that shouldn't be like that. You need to understand what it is that you don't want to do, and then eventually it will reveal itself, I think. I mean, that is what has happened to me. I tried so many different things. I started with machine learning, and I started with basic computer science principles, because that is something where you should start from. You can't start from machine learning or blockchain, because I mean that those are technologies that are a little bit complicated, and in order for you to understand how to program and how are these technologies working, you need to know how computers interact, how things work basically. And in order to do that, you need to learn data structures, and not necessarily DSA as we know it, but the basic principles of computer science. How do computers interact? What is LAN, WAN, MAN, whatever, those different things that we learn in first year or second year in some cases. So yeah, I would say that those basic concepts are very important, especially if you want to be like a software engineer or any kind of engineer in that for that matter. And then eventually you choose a field that is a little bit more secondary, maybe like web development, a little bit more complicated like blockchain. So that's how you like progress through things, and you don't just jump onto things that that are like hyping up. So I mean, you need to just be mindful of those things. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi, for your answer.
Of course, yeah.
Hi Vaishnavi, I'm Chetna Patil and I'm from GDSC WC. And as you told, trying out different things in first year, like DS algorithms and all. So my next question is almost based on it. So whenever I entered first year, so most of the time there's confusion between two things, whether one should focus on competitive programming or development. And it's quite more confusing when people say, if you want good placements, then just go for CP. So in spite of all this confusion, how did you manage to follow your interest, that is development?
I can say for sure that I did not do any competitive programming. I did participate in a few competitions in college. Like I participated once in a coding competition that that I was doing just for like just for proving people that I know how to code basically, because a lot of people are like, if you know how to code, just do this thing and do that thing. And in order to prove those people, I was like, okay, let me try this. So I did that, and it is fun. Like, it is very fun doing competitive programming. If you like programming, if you like solving problems, it is fun. Okay, and if you, as long as you're doing it for fun and to just bombard your brain with problems and like try to understand how to come up with a solution, trying to build that problem solving mindset, if that is the reason you're doing competitive programming, then that's fine. If you're doing it for placements, not the best approach, because see, competitive programming, like I would not, I mean, it is a very simple way to explain, like there's a very simple way to explain this. In competitive programming, you have to try out the fastest approach to do something, because there's a time constraint, there's a lot of different components, right? And whereas in an interview there is a time constraint, but you need to understand what is the best approach to do this particular thing. Even though in competitive programming also, you will have to understand what's the most efficient, less time and resources consuming technique to do something. But honestly, I feel that competitive programming is good if you want to like increase your speed in solving problems and have fun with it, basically. Whereas, like, I feel that it's not entirely, I would say, wise to invest your entire time and energy into something like that, because it's not, I mean, sure, it is exciting for some people, but at least for me, I would say I would not want to just solve problems all day. I would like to apply that problem solving skills onto some particular place, right? I would like to build some projects, or do something with those skills that is meaningful in some way. So at least in my case, I would definitely want that. I would want to have a balance between the two, but I would not pursue competitive programming like as a thing on its own, because I think that there are platforms like LeetCode and all where you can practice problems or placements, because that is the platform you go to practice problems or placements, right? So as long as you practice there, and as long as maybe communicate with people in the community, try to understand, try to learn about the best approach to solve problems, because a lot of people, what they do is they open a problem on LeetCode, they look at the solution, they try to imitate it, and stuff like that, and they're just fooling themselves basically. So if you genuinely want to practice, try to come up with one, because obviously, like, solving a problem, there's no one way to solve a problem. It's just like maths. Even in maths, there's no one way to solve a particular problem. There are so many different ways to do it. So same goes for programming as well. If you can find multiple ways to solve a certain problem, you are good to go for placement. If you know how to walk someone through what it is that you're trying to do, you are good for placements. You don't need to dedicate time and resources into doing competitive programming that requires a lot of effort. So there's an additional point I would like to add here, is that the landscape is changing now, because there are a lot of people who are talking about what kind of applications does DSA have in the actual software engineering job. Because I mean, DSA as well as like competitive programming, like, because those two are pretty similar in that sense. But I would say that a lot of people are also focusing on the kind of projects that you're building, the kind of open source contributions that you're doing. So if you don't have those things, then you're probably in trouble, because there's a lot of competition in this field. You want to stay ahead of the curve, right? So as long as you build projects, and as long as you focus on and you focus on a holistic way of developing your skills, then that's fine. There's no linear way of becoming a software engineer. You can't just do one thing and then expect everything to be all right. So, or expect to become a very good software engineer, or even like in any other domain also. If you want to excel, you can't just be like, okay, if I just do this, I'll be able to crack my placement. I'll be able to get placed at Microsoft or some big company, or FANG or Manga or whatnot. I don't know. So yeah, that's pretty much what my stance is. Obviously, like, there might be people who would have a different opinion on this, but honestly, at the end of the day, it depends on you. What are your priorities? What it is that you want to do, and based on that, based on opinions of different people, try to weigh in your choices. Try to understand what it is that you want to do, and then proceed. That's pretty much what my 2 cents are on this. So, yeah.
Okay. Hello, Vesh. I'm Devang. So we have met 2 weeks ago in the resume session.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was this questions that juniors keep asking. They also want to start with development, but then there are 2 approaches that they go ahead, right? With Udemy, like people just tend to follow that one course till they end, and then just think अब मैं नया project बनाएगा खुद का. And then there's another people who just take up one project and decide to make that. Yeah. So as someone who has been a developer for a long time, what would be your response to that? Like, what would you suggest to the people who are looking to start with development and start a project? What approach should you prefer?
See, for me, when I started development, I also thought that Udemy is the best resource. I was like, wow, there's so many courses on Udemy for MongoDB and React and whatnot. This is like a gold mine. I can learn so much from this. But honestly, when I got done with like one of the courses, I was like, okay, let me try to build something on my own now. And then I was like, okay, I guess I can't build stuff on my own, because I mean, this course did not cultivate my like my brain, it didn't sort of it sort of inhibited the way I think, because it helped me to build my project, right? So let's just assume a person, a certain person who's doing a Udemy course. What they usually do is they go through some of the videos, they try to follow along with the tutorial. Sometimes what happens is that the videos are recorded, like, let's say 1 or 2 years ago, and then what happens is that the packages are deprecated, or something something comes in the way, and they're like, okay, this course might not be the best way to learn this particular technology. And that is usually the case. So what I usually recommend is follow the official documentation, or follow the official documentation, the tutorials mentioned in the official documentation. So that is the best way to learn something. But let's say if you're not someone who can read documentation at first, because you're a beginner, you're like, okay, you're too overwhelmed by documentations, then Udemy courses are, sure, they can help. You can also follow along, build projects and stuff. But if you put those tutorial projects on your resume and then expect the hiring manager to think that, oh, this person knows so much of React and web development, let me just hire them, that won't happen. Because at least for me, when I see a resume, and if I see that there is like because I've done all the courses, so I know what are the tutorial projects that are there in these courses. So if I see that there's a tutorial project, like a hamburger app kind of thing from that one of the Udemy courses by Maximilian Schwarzmüller, when I see that, I'm like, okay, this is auto reject. Because if you're putting a tutorial based project on your resume, that means that you've not done, you're not experienced in this using this technology, and hence you're not suitable to proceed with this role or whatever it is that you're applying for. So I think the best way to approach this is do the tutorial, do whatever it is that you want to do to learn, okay, and then start a fresh project. Before starting the fresh project, before doing create React app or create Flutter app or whatever it is that you're creating here, before doing that, try to come up with an idea, a very simple idea. Maybe you can search on the web what it is that you want to build. Try to add certain elements of your own to it. If it's something that is too trite or too common, let's say if you're trying to build a tic-tac-toe in React, that is like a very, very common project, right? So if you are building something like that, maybe you can make it theme based, something like a dinosaur theme, or some other element you can attach to it. Or you can like you can be like you can mix and match two games together or two projects together. Let's say if you're building this tic-tac-toe game, you can do it in Klingon, the language Klingon that is used in The Big Bang Theory and like other nerd shows. So if that is like, if you do that, then also it might be helpful, because you're adding certain elements of your own, and then describe it in the way you updated that project, or you added your own elements to that project, because that is very, very important. If you just putting a hamburger app in front of me and you're expecting me to believe that you know how to use React, I won't believe you, because you just followed along a tutorial. You did not use your brain to code, right? You did not use any of this. You just you just saw what this other person is doing, and you try to do the same thing. So try to explain me what you did differently, and then I'll be like, okay, this person knows something. And try to learn how to read documentations, because if you know how to do that, then you're very good to go. You're born developer, because documentations really help you navigate through features and through different kinds of things that are there. So if that, and it's not just limited to development, be it anything, even if you're using Figma, which is a tool that UX designers use to build prototypes and wireframes. Even if you're doing that, try to understand the tool first, try to understand what it does, try to navigate through the documentation, try to watch videos of the official people, like the people who have built this thing, right? They know best, right? They know how they built it, and they know how exactly they want you to use it. So just keep those things in mind and then proceed. And I would say, like you said, that there are two approaches. There's one more approach, that is open source contributions. So you can definitely go ahead, do that as well. And for open source contribution, you don't need to know how to code. You can do no code contributions, you can do design contributions. You can just say that, okay, this looks bad, please correct it. That is also open source contribution. So yeah, I mean, just try to get involved in the community, try to connect with different people, and you learn with them and from them, and possibly even, in some ways help them solve their own problems. So that is way better than just, sitting in a corner of a room and just doing Udemy courses back to back and binging on them. And some people just like tick, 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 tick certificate. Something like that also happens. So don't do that. Certificates do not matter, because if I look at a certificate, I'm like, okay, sure, you've done this certificate, but how do I know that you've actually done it? You need to show me some proof, right? You need to show me what projects you've built. That's why GitHub is very important. You need to make sure that your projects are properly showcased on these platforms like GitHub, GitLab, stuff like that. So yeah, just keep these things in mind, and yeah, I think you'll be good to go.
Yeah. I have one question more to ask, add up to this. Like, say, when you start a new language, let's say there are 3 people who want to start React, or like even Nirmit has this thing that they all have to do a college project in Django. Now, none of them have ever done this before, right? Would you suggest learning, if you're learning a new framework, should that go solo, or should you just go with a group, or like programming something? Like, what do you think would be an ideal approach to learn something as a framework? Not a group project, but to learn something first and then just go after making something big. Would you suggest going directly after the group, or would you suggest just take 2 friends, or I'll just go more on my way?
Right. So when it comes to group projects, I know exactly what you're talking about, because when I've participated in hackathons, there's always this conflict of interest that, oh, I know Node.js, you know Django, okay, what should we do now? So then what we do is that we settle with Node.js, because usually the other person bails out and I'm like, okay, I need to do everything now. Oh God. But see, like when it comes to learning frameworks, I think the first thing you need to do is understand and be aware and be very, very honest with yourself whether you know the basics. Okay, if you're learning React, be very honest with yourself whether you know HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. Because a lot of people, they think, oh, I've done HTML, CSS. I mean, that is so easy, right? And JavaScript, oh, that is like piece of cake, right? And what are these Twitter people fussing about? Like, why are they like talking about it nonstop and bitching about it so much? Pardon my language. But I would just say that like if you are going forward with the framework, if you want to learn Django, if you don't know Python, how would you learn Django? How would you learn Flask, right? If you don't know the very base, and I'm not saying just the basics, right? I'm not just saying that you need to know how to create a constructor and a class and like main.py hello world and stuff like that. You're not, I mean, that you need to know stuff that is way more advanced than that. You need to know every concept, not every concept, but like most of the concepts of Python. You need, if someone tells you that, Devang just code me this Twitter bot or something, you should be able to at least know how to approach it. Even if you're Googling it, you need to know what the code is doing. You need to understand what the Python code is doing. So if you know that, then you can look at, okay, which framework it is that I want to learn. And based on that, you try to learn the framework. And if you already know a programming language, it will be very easy for you to navigate through a documentation or something. So I would say React documentation is very so-so, like it's not the best, I would say. So what you can do instead is, like, obviously you can either follow these Udemy tutorials, but at least for web development, front-end stuff, I think Front-End Masters is a very great resource to learn. I know that I don't usually promote video-based stuff because it's very passive and you're just like laying back, whatever they're doing and let me do the same things. That you shouldn't do. Passive learning is not the way to learn how to code and stuff. But I would just suggest, like, let's say you're completely not able to understand the documentation. Then I think Front-End Masters, what they do is that they create a new course every quarter or every year, right? So they have like this person, Brian Holt. and he creates courses on React, and he is the best course on React, honestly, I would say. Just from the beginning till the end, if you know JavaScript and HTML and CSS, you will understand every word that he's saying. You'll know what are hooks, what are class-based components, what are each and every one of those things. And you won't go ahead with half knowledge like these Udemy courses, because Udemy courses, they don't teach half of the stuff. They're just touching and brushing up on the basics, like, oh, this is hooks, this is that. Now go and learn on your own. It's basically that. Okay. So, and yes, Frontend Masters is free with GitHub Student Developer Pack. Just plugging that in, since I'm a GitHub Campus expert, you can just go to GitHub Education's website, and you can just enter your school issued email ID. If you don't have one, you can apply with your ID card or your other receipts that prove that you're a student. And then for the next 1 or 2 years, you will get free access to the GitHub Campus Experts, GitHub Student Developer Pack. Yeah, I mean, it's a great pack. You'll get a lot of different things. It also has a premium Canva subscription for 12 months and a lot of different stuff, very exciting stuff. So if you're interested, you can check that out as well. But Frontend Master is definitely a great resource. Other than that, just learn. I would say just start with the project, try to build stuff. Okay, when you have this vision, okay, I want to make cards on this, like I want to show some cards on the screen that go like this when I hover them or something, right? So when you do that, then you search for it, and then you try to learn about the different ways you can do that stuff. So once you've copy pasted all the code, because I know you won't try to understand it, you'll just try to copy paste everything. When you've copy pasted everything, you've just stapled together everything, try to understand what you're trying to do. And then you should be able to, let's say, first of all, write it cleanly in a very modular format, because I think writing code is very important. It's a skill of its own, because if you want to get hired, like these people, they won't just look at what your projects are. They will go to your GitHub profile. They'll see what your commits are, how often you're committing, what kind of commit messages you're writing, because those things are also very important to software engineers, and they're very picky about it, basically. So just be mindful of those things, and try to make sure that you know what every line of code is doing, okay? Because you need to know that. If you don't know that, then you've not written the code, evidently, and you need to be able to explain the code. Basically, like if you have applied to MLH fellowship, they ask you to do the same thing. They ask you to walk them through every line of code, because that is when they can say for sure that this person understands what they're doing. Even if they've not written this piece of code, they know what it is that it is doing, and they know what they are doing. So I would say that is very essential. And I think these are some of the best practices in which you learn how to do development and stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more, I think we can elaborate that more maybe later in some other session. But yeah, for now, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah.
Thanks a lot. Nikita?
Yes. We'll definitely look up to your suggestions. Hi Vaishnavi, this is Nikita.
Hi.
From GDSC BSIOTR. And yeah, as the previous DSC lead and the current GitHub campus ambassador of volunteer experiences as well. So your question, what about college societies, and how do you view them as a contributing factor to a person's personality and holistic development?
College clubs are very important, like very, very important, because I think that really helped me build my confidence. If you asked me 2 years earlier that, just talk in front of like 46 people, I would not have been able to do that. And just show just talk about everything that I know. So I would not have been able to do that. So I think that is very important. Plus I came without any preparation. You're asking me questions. I'm just like, yeah, I know this. So I'm just going to say whatever it is that I know. So, I mean, it's basically that. And that comes with practice. That comes with, let's say, that comes with, after organizing and hosting so many different sessions, right? So I would say that college communities do matter. and they help you build your confidence, they help you build your network. I mean, now you all know each other, right? I mean, you would not have known each other if you were not in this club, or if you're not in a part of the DSC program, right? So I mean, that I think these programs and these clubs offer you an opportunity to network with people, especially like if they're very important in tier 3 colleges. And I won't say, I mean, tier 3 colleges are not bad. I would not say that they're bad. They're actually really good. It's just that like the college is usually very indifferent to the students' entire development. So yeah, I mean, the students have to take initiative on their own. So yeah, I would say that definitely it is very important, but there's a very big but. That's what she said. But there, so basically the thing is that what happens at some times is that you outgrow these clubs, okay? Because that happened to me. I was like, okay, I was DSC lead, I was even a part of some of my college communities, but some of the times if that environment gets too toxic for you, because the thing is, you need to always remember this, that you are an average of the 5 people that you interact with the most, right? So you need to make sure that you choose your team and everyone that you surround yourself with very properly and with proper consideration, because you might at some point start imitating them, okay? And you like the behavioral changes will happen inadvertently. You won't even know that you're doing those things. You don't even know. I might start doing this after interacting with Devang a lot. So so yeah, I mean, that is definitely a possibility. So so yeah, I mean, like, just be sure that whatever team that you're part of, whatever club that you're a part of, you're vibing with those people, you know who they are, and you know that they have the right kind of mindset that you need to grow as well. And I mean, they are also kind of ambitious and they are passionate about what it is that they're doing. If they're not, then just leave, okay? If they are corrupt and they're just doing this for status and politics and, oh, I am the secretary or the president of this club or something, if they're just doing for that, just leave, okay? There's no shame in leaving. I have left so many clubs, and I mean, I can't even care. I can't care less. Like, it's just like, bye, if I don't like what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I would say that never hesitate for leaving a club. I would say it might be too dramatic sometimes, and that you might actually enjoy it if you are like melodramatic, into melodramatic stuff and all. But other than that, I would say that it is a very good exposure. So yeah, I 100%, at least in first and second year, you should 100% participate in these clubs. Maybe if you don't want to hold leadership positions in these clubs, that's fine, but it will be great on your resume. It will look great on your resume that, okay, this person right out of college, they've held so many leadership positions. So that is great for us. They can lead a team or something, or maybe if not lead a team, then they can just be a team player essentially. So that's what it shows. So yeah, that's
so in short, we have to choose wisely which group or environment we belong.
Yeah, and I would 100% recommend joining the GDSC club of any college, because that is like the best club you can ever be a part of. I mean, some colleges excluded, but I mean, I won't generalize that, but I'm just saying that at least the GDSC clubs present here are definitely great place to learn. So,
yeah. Here's the next question. How can engineers keep an eye out for non-technical opportunities?
Okay. So, I mean, like, it totally depends, because some engineers, they're like, okay, they want to do something in tech. So that is great. But if you don't want to do something in tech, if you're like, no, I don't want to do DSA, I don't want to do machine learning, I don't want to do all of this stuff, I don't want to use so much of my brain, right? I mean, I don't want to do this. So if it's more non-technical, so in non-technical domain, there's so many different things. There's content writing, technical content writing, which is a technical thing technically, but it is a non-technical thing that you are at the end of the day doing. So, but yeah, like those are the things. There's social media and marketing, and I won't say analytics, because that is definitely technical. But other than that, I would say like even design and product management, all of these things are in some ways non-technical, at least if you want to stay in tech, that is. Okay, I mean, if you don't want to stay in tech, there's like so much stuff to do, right? I mean, you can just do whatever. You can just sell vada pav. That is non-technical, right? So it's up to you. So yeah, I mean, totally depends. But if you want to stay in tech, you have to be in touch with the tech stuff, right? If you want to stay in tech, even if you want to do non-technical stuff, you need to know what is happening, right? You need to know that today blockchain is like the hype. 2 years back, it was machine learning, and then artificial intelligence and stuff. And then before that, it was like, you know, AR, VR, and augmented reality, virtual reality, and whatnot. So throughout 4 years, I've seen so much fluctuation in tech. So as a non-technical person, also you need to know what to do, because if you want to market, or if you want to like do design and stuff, like right now for designers, the market is so rich, because I mean, NFT markets have opened up a lot of opportunities for designers. They can design stuff and they can monetize their art and stuff. So I would say that stay in touch with tech if you want to stay in tech, and if you want more money, that is also a factor. If you don't want money, then sure, you can go do whatever you want. But yeah, like don't hold me to that. I mean, I'm not promising you money. If you stay in tech, you definitely get money. That's not the case. But at least if you are putting in the effort, if you're trying your best, if you're exploring, if you're connecting with people, you definitely find an opportunity that is, you know, that is worth it and that is highly paid, and you'll enjoy it basically. So yeah.
Okay, I have one question. Whenever I see your LinkedIn profile, it appears to me that you're one of the most busiest persons out there. And you know, you're constantly helping the student community. You know, you're even working for startups and all. You're even doing internships. I mean, how do you manage your work, you know, your internships, your college, and do you even get time for your hobbies? Like,
so I mean, I would say I don't really manage my time sometimes. Like sometimes I just, you know, just let it be. I'm like, okay, I don't want to do stuff today. I'm gonna chill today. I'm just gonna watch Netflix. That's all. But yeah, like I would say that when you're doing something that you genuinely like, you don't care. Honestly, you don't care how much time it's gonna take. But there's a big but. That's what she said again. The big but here is that you need to understand that you might burn out a lot. Okay, you might burn out at some point. You might, it might have implications on your health, and it might also overwhelm you at times. It overwhelms me because I know that. Okay, there's some ringtone, but yeah. In any case, what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes we say yes to everything because we're like, oh, opportunity, yes. Because we rarely see opportunities, right? It's like ek baar Bhagwan ne diya, it's like chappad, you know, khol ke diya. I don't know what it, chappad paad ke diya, exactly. So I don't know what that saying is essentially, but I totally butchered it. But what I'm trying to say here is that once you start getting opportunities, you get a lot of them. Because once I became GDSC lead, that opened a lot of doors for me. And that, you know, like, I mean, I did a lot of internships before as well. I used to work on development projects. I used to do freelance stuff. But even after that, I got a lot of new opportunities at a better, you know, funded startups, or maybe, you know, like at places where I'm truly passionate about what they're doing. And honestly, like you said, that when you look at my LinkedIn profile, you're like, okay, I'm busy, and I am busy. Like, I do a lot of things. And I think half of the things that I do are not even on my LinkedIn because of academics and other stuff that I don't want people to know about, right? So, so like those things are also not there. But when it comes to hobbies and all, I think my favorite hobby, and I think this is a hobby that everyone should have, is sleeping. So, and at least, you know, like developers, because they need to know how to sleep and when to sleep, right? A lot of people, they code for 24 hours and more, and they're just like, oh, I slept at 4 a.m. yesterday. So, I mean, that is like, I'm so cool, man. But that is not true. Like, the thing is that if you are staying up late, and if you're sleeping at 6 a.m. in the morning and then sleeping till 12 p.m. or maybe even later than that, you're just putting a damper on your health. So if you're trying to be a developer, you're trying to be an innovator, and you are very essential to the world. You need to take care of yourself. So I think sleeping is a very crucial thing that you need to do. Other than that, obviously watch Netflix, because it has great shows and stuff. If you can get like free friend who can like lend their Netflix credentials to you, do watch some. But don't, I mean, the thing is that if you want to manage your time properly, you need to know how to do things in moderation, right? That is the basic formula here. You don't do development for 10-15 hours at once. That is not moderation. That is the opposite of moderation. Again, that the same goes for Netflix and all. You don't sleep for 10-15 hours at once. You don't watch Netflix for 10 hours or the whole day, right? You try to allocate and you try to compartmentalize. On some days you want to delete Netflix because some things are very that you need to prioritize. If your exams are nearby, you need to focus on that. If your placements are nearby, you need to focus on that. So yeah, I mean, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is on Netflix. That is correct. I mean, now it's over. I've seen everything, so there's nothing more to see there. But it's a great show if you want to watch. I'm probably shall watch it again. But yeah, I would say that focus on yourself as well and focus on stuff. Do everything in moderation, at least when you're a student, or because when you're an adult, it is very difficult to manage your time. That, I mean, they might have a different formula. I don't know what it is. Maybe once I graduate I'll know, but maybe we can discuss that then. But yeah, for now I would say everything is good in moderation, and yeah,
we'll surely do things in moderation. Sona mona sab moderation nahi karenge. But okay, I have one more question. Most of the people out here are developers, right? So what is the importance of college hackathons, and how much students or developers should focus on college hackathons?
College hackathons, no. See, I'll tell you one thing. There's one simple formula to determine whether a hackathon is worth doing or not. If a hackathon is asking you for money, give me 30 rupees as fees and participate in a hackathon, that is not a hackathon. That is something else altogether, some agenda to collect money. That will not help you in any way. Or maybe it might help you, but I would not say to participate in those kind of hackathons. I don't know if Smart India Hackathon takes money, but I think it's a good hackathon. But no, it doesn't. Okay, I don't know. Like, I have never participated because my college did not think that I'm a good person for it. Mostly because I did not have the required CGPA in order to participate in that. But I guess their loss. But yeah, I would say that college hackathons, if they are like, let's say if a hackathon is supported by Deffolio or MLH, that is like a short way of saying that these hackathons are legit. And you will probably learn something here. You'll probably get a good experience. You'll network with some good people. And I think an importance of a hackathon goes beyond just development. It goes like you learn how to present your work. You learn how to network with people. And usually in a hackathon, development is not the only thing that is supposed to be done. Like if you're building a team of 4 people, one person should be a front-end developer, another person should be back-end, another person should be a designer, and one other person could be like to present the hack, because that is also very important. Maybe that person might not be the most useful during the duration of the hackathon, but they can definitely do a lot of research. They can help you with a lot of different things, right? So when you are participating in a hackathon, focus on these things, and it is like, as long as you do that, you'll be good to go. And other than that, I would say that if, let's say, you are participating in a hackathon and you have to do everything on your own, I would say you won't learn a lot from that work. But I mean, if you feel that, okay, this hackathon it has a lot of great prizes and I want to learn and I want to win and stuff, so you can definitely go ahead, hack solo. You'll learn a lot, but you'll waste a lot of energy and time as well. But you, at the end of the day, if you have something presentable, you have something that is usable, if not useful. Useful is different. Useful can be like, game is not useful, right, in any way, but it should be usable, right? A person should be able to navigate through it. A person should be able to perform the action that it is intended for. So as long as your project has that, your hackathon experience is successful, I would say, at least. And if the bonus points to you, brownie points to you, if you have like good UI and everything, and a good market strategy, that okay, I am gonna market it this way or that way, or maybe if you've done a user survey before the hackathon, that will also help you a lot. Maybe you can convert this project into a startup. That'll be great. So yeah, I think yeah, that's a great way to approach hackathons. And you can learn more about hackathons and all of these things, just trying to plug in Michi Spotlight here, the Michi Spotlight newsletter. I've written all of these things about all of these things there. So if you want to learn from that, you can read that as well. So yeah.
Okay, so Vaishnavi, I have one question to you. Initially, you said like you were into a freelance work. So what kind of work you started and what you did actually?
So freelance is a very interesting field, honestly. Like today, we have a lot of great platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and stuff like that, where there is like a very strong thing, a strong contract between the contractor and the client and everything. So I would say that if you are on these great platforms and if you know how to showcase your work, then you can be a freelancer for sure. But if you're a beginner, I won't recommend you to start with freelancing, because unless you are in a dire need for money, let's say you want to buy a PS5 or something, and you really need the money because your parents are not giving you the thing that you need most. So if that is the case, then you can definitely like go for freelancing, and maybe you might land into a lot of trouble if you're not good at the thing that that you're supposed to do. Because I mean, freelance projects are very like, you have to deliver in time. There's not much support. You won't be able to like, okay, can you explain me how to do this? They will be like, no, figure it out yourself. Go away. Don't disturb me. So you will have to do everything on your own. So I would recommend start with internships if you can get some. So if you get an internship, you will be able to interact with people. If you're building something, you'll be like, okay, is this the best approach to build it? Is that, should I use that technology to build this? Or, what kind of system architecture should I do? Because I mean, a lot of people neglect system design and architecture while they're building web development or development-based projects. They're like, yeah, MongoDB, MonStack, yeah. But other than that, nothing exists basically. So that shouldn't be there. And some people are like, oh, backend, oh, I know how to build APIs. That's all backend is, right? So I mean, some people exist. Some of those people also exist. So just don't be those kind of people. Freelancing requires a little bit of highly advanced knowledge, an ability to make your own decisions based on make your own product decisions. So I would suggest that if that is the case, then go for freelancing. Money, and if you have specialized knowledge, go for freelancing. But other than that, internships are very good. So
yeah, hi Vaishnavi, I'm Siddhi Hagane from GDSC WC. So sorry, I'm not able to on my cam. I have some issue over here. So.
That's fine. That's all right.
So as you said, like about internships. So I had a question on that. So, many students, we get confused, like, yeah, is this the right time for the internship? Or, where should I start my preparation for internship, and where should I look for them? So what would you tell about it? Like, when are we good to start for an internship, or where to start looking for it?
That's a very good question, honestly. Like, this is something that I have encountered. Like, this question I've encountered it many times. And when it comes to internship preparations, you have to see, you need to specialize a bit. So if let's say you want to do an internship as a mobile application developer, so you need to learn something based on that. You need to learn Flutter, you need to learn Android or something. I mean, just maybe one or two frameworks that will help you achieve what it is that the internship is going to be about. Don't try to do 2 to 3 things simultaneously. Don't think that, okay, I can do web development, I can do mobile app development as well, both together, and I'll earn a lot of money. That should not be the case. I would say that, like, if you ask me what is the best time to do an internship, in terms of, let's say, when should I start doing internships, then I would say first year or even 12th grade, if you are aware of what internships are at that point. I was, so I did. So my suggestion is that do anything that you can get your hands on in first year at least, because I think any kind of internship will teach you something. Okay, even if an internship is like completely like it was a very bad internship and you did not get paid and your manager was rude, you at least know what a bad internship is, right? Because if you get a very good internship right at the beginning and then later along your life you get a bad boss, then you won't know how to deal with them, right? You'll be like, oh, how am I supposed to deal with this person, right? And you might not be as successful as you might want to be. Just be like, oh no, I don't want to work with this person, like, I'm just going, bye. That you can't do that at that time of your life, because there might be people depending on you at that time, right? So right now is the best time to explore the bad stuff and the good stuff together. I started, like, if you want to learn about my journey, I started with, like, if you've seen my LinkedIn, if you just scroll down at the very bottom of my experiences, there are like marketing internships, and basically I used to do social media marketing for communities and stuff, and a lot of volunteer work as well, because I did not get a lot of internships because I did not know stuff. I mean, even though I did, but I did not have much to show for, and people used to think that she's in first year, so she doesn't know stuff. So, and that is usually true. So I would say that start with anything, honestly. I started with marketing, and then I progressed on to design and like a little bit of, development and stuff. And then basically I just went on full on into development. And then later on in life, when I realized that, okay, I have skills that I have developed over the years that, that are not just development. Like more than 60% of my skills, I wouldn't say more than 60, more than 50% of my skills are, non-technical, or are something that you can do, which doesn't require you to sit behind a laptop. By that, I mean that, speak at events, even though I am currently sitting in front of my laptop, but that's not what I mean. I just feel that, I can speak, I can, do a lot of different things. I can post stuff, I can write, I can do a lot of stuff, right? So which is like beyond just the usual development and coding and stuff. So I thought that, maybe development is not the best place for me, because to completely utilize all of my skills, right? So I thought that maybe something like product management or design and like these kind of things, or community management is something that is more suited for me, because that my development experience definitely helps there, and I'm good at other stuff as well, so it definitely suits my entire personality. So I feel that if you start to explore and do a lot of things, so I'll tell you this, I mean, if you go to my LinkedIn, you've probably seen that I've done software engineering internships, I've done product management, I've done machine learning internship also. So, and developer advocacy is something that I recently jumped onto. So I think that by doing internships and by doing all of these things, you build up your profile. Once you get that first opportunity, from there you can start building up. My first big opportunity was Bottle, where I started working as a software developer, and after that I got so many different opportunities from other startups and other places. So once I was done with that phase, I was able to do other things as well. I was able to build a good personal brand, where I think I might have said this several times, that I usually don't apply to an internship, or I don't apply for, okay, please take me or something like that. They usually approach me because why? Because of the presence that I have built on LinkedIn and on Twitter. The current opportunity that I got at Scalar Academy, like a person like who's currently my reporting manager, he approached me via Twitter, and he was like, okay, I like your work and everything, would you like to join us? And he just took like 2 interviews because they have to show now that okay, it is difficult to get in this place. Obviously it is very difficult to get into Scalar Academy, like as a developer advocate or even any other role, and it's a very good place to work as well. But honestly, when people approach you directly, you have a higher chance to get selected, because there's literally like nothing stopping you unless you completely mess it up and you say something very politically or ethically wrong. Unless that happens, you have like a sure shot at that particular internship. So I would say personal branding played a very huge role on me, on my internship applications and stuff. Even my machine learning internship and everything I got from through LinkedIn and through Twitter on my DMs. So that is there. And one more thing, which is referrals. Like a lot of people I interacted with on Twitter Spaces or in sessions like these, like, someone was listening to me in one of these sessions and they were like, okay, you are a great speaker, so would you like to like collaborate with our community or, just be a speaker or something like that. Or so those kind of things also opened up doors for me. Like Anuja was attending my resume session and even Devang was attending that session. Maybe that's why they invited me here, right? Now I can meet a lot more people, and now I've met Nikita and Nirmit and other people as a Siddhi, and I don't know how to pronounce her name. so yeah, like I would say that that definitely opens up doors for you. So yeah, and if let's say if you are completely new to this field and you don't have that kind of social media presence or your personal brand, there are great platforms like AngelList. AngelList is, I think, one of the best platforms to seek internships and stuff. You get the best opportunities there. So do go there. Maybe through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fine, I guess. Don't use Internshala. That's my opinion here. I would not elaborate more because Internshala is very scammy. Honestly, you won't get a legit internship there unless you want to waste your time. If you want to waste your time, sure, go ahead. But if you don't, then go to AngelList, go to LinkedIn, go to Twitter. Twitter is a great way to get opportunities as well. Like be a part of communities like Mishi Spotlight and other communities that are there in the ecosystem. You can go there as well. But Michi Spotlight is a great way to learn about opportunities that other people are posting, because a lot of people come to me every day. They're saying that, okay, we need a developer, we need a designer, we need like this person, that person, and can you please post this opportunity in your community? So I do that very regularly. So if you want that, do join the Discord servers of different communities, and Michi Spotlight's Discord server is also like very great if you want to do that. But there are other communities as well. Check them out as well. Not shamelessly plugging this here, but genuinely, like I'm not doing this for marketing purposes. I'm doing this because I'm saying this because this is genuinely true. I got a lot of opportunities through communities myself. So yeah, I think that those are all the ways that you can get internships and stuff. And yeah, there's one more way. There's hackathons, right? So hackathons are like one of the best places to get a direct internship. It is a little difficult because you have to win the hackathon and then people will be like, okay, this is a good person, let me just hire them. Because I think some of my friends got recruited by a company called Headout. So they were hosting a hackathon over there. And it was a company-based hackathon. So they usually companies host these hackathons to hire people only. Like that is their main purpose. Not main purpose, but like it is one of their main purposes. So yeah, like definitely take advantage of these hackathons, try to win them, try to get placed in internships and stuff. I got an opportunity from Myntra, which I completely messed up, but in the interview obviously, but like I participated in one of the Myntra hackathons and I got an interview, right? So even just getting the interview is like very difficult for a lot of people. So I think it will be a great way as well to seek out hackathons as a way to seek internships and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Vaishnavi. That was a great answer. And as you said, internships are really very important right now. So most of the students, like almost everyone, have understood now, like how internships are important. And as you said, that you started at very early age, right? And companies are approaching to you. So that's really inspiring for everyone, and surely everyone will follow the same path. And I have another question that can you tell about some upcoming fields which pay well? Because many students are not aware about such fields and all. So if you can tell about any.
I mean, if I knew, then I would have also like gone into these fields. But see, I think tech, like I said before, it's a very volatile and very fluctuating field. Yesterday, machine learning engineers are being paid the most. Today, blockchain developers are being paid the most, because see, the whole thing is about supply and demand, right? So if there are a lot of people in certain domain, the demand is a little lesser, obviously, because there are so many people to fill in the positions, and maybe they might cut down on the cost, right? That might be a case. And honestly, even if a lot of people don't believe me on this, but the fact is that even though there are so many developers in the ecosystem, but there are not many good software engineers in the ecosystem, at least in the Indian ecosystem right now. There are so many people who are very who are just faking it, basically. Like I mean, this is more of a like a not but like a more of a gossip kind of story. But I would just say that like one of the companies, they were hiring through the online coding challenge rounds and stuff, and there was apparently a Telegram group filled with 32,000 people or something, I don't know, some number, and like one of the people were apparently like trying to imitate me by impersonating me to get answers out of people. And it was very like dumb, honestly. Why would I ever and that too on Telegram? Why would someone ever like put a display picture on Telegram? Because everyone's trying to hide themselves on Telegram, right? And everyone's like doing piracy over there. So I would just say that like there are these kind of platforms as well, where people are copying together. Major copying things are going on, and these people, they might get through the interview rounds, and maybe they might learn they might solve 400 questions on software engineering on LeetCode, and that's how they might end up with an offer. I'm not saying that people who do end up with an offer have it easy. That is not true. But like I would just say that there are a lot of people who are just faking it. And there are a lot of people who are not really very good software engineers. So there's a lot of demand in this space, a lot of demand. There are not many good back-end engineers, as you can see on Twitter, because Twitter is filled with front-end engineers, Everyone is talking about JavaScript and stuff. So I would say that, I mean, if you go for a field that is not that hypey, you might actually get paid more, which is ironical, but it might be the truth, right? A lot of people are going for product management and stuff as well, because it is very highly paid. But the thing is, like, most people who go for product management, if they go for it just because it is highly paid, they won't be able to do good at their job, right? So I would say, don't look at the kind of money that you're being paid for it. You will be compensated fairly. I know that for sure. At least in good tech companies, you'll be compensated fairly. So as long as you choose something that you are really passionate about, you can definitely find a job or something. Despite all the competition and stuff, despite all the noise, you will be able to find an opportunity that is good for you and good for you to support your family, if that is like your priority, or maybe something else good to support your fashion pursuits, that you want to buy designer stuff or something like that, other uses of money. So yeah, so I mean, like, you will be compensated fairly. You don't need to worry about that. But if you're just asking about like fields that people might not be aware of, and people should explore them apart from software engineering, I would say blockchain is definitely up and coming these days. Blockchain developers, like Solidity developers, are very much in demand, because not a lot of people know the Solidity programming language. So that is there. One more thing would be mobile application development, because a lot of startups, they need app developers, because their idea is usually like, oh, we want to build a mobile app which will do this, that. So I mean, that is how they start, right? They might not need machine learning people to do to get started with. So there might not be a lot of demand for machine learning engineers, especially for undergrad people, because there are more specialized people doing much better in that field. So I would suggest, if you're doing machine learning, do it for research purposes. So yeah, like research purposes very important. Other than that, I would say like other than that, software engineering is great. I know I was going to say things other than that. Yes, there's product management, there's product design, there's cybersecurity people. There's so many fields in tech. Like, just explore any one of those. And I mean, a lot of people think that software engineers get paid the most. That is probably true in most cases, but you can go for so many different things and you can excel in that particular field and you might get paid more because there's less competition. So yeah, just be smart about it. So that's all.
Okay, Vaishnavi. I think you have answered a lot of our questions, and I personally got to know the things that I am doing wrong, you know. So I'll definitely try to apply them. Udemy wala to I'll try reading documentation now.
Wow.
But I have this one more question to you. How would you describe your journey from first year to today? ना एक लड़की आई थी RIT के दरवाजों पे, सपने थे बड़े बड़े, ये करूंगी वो करूंगी, है ना? But definitely your journey is one of those बहुत inspirational journey आपकी, you know. It has ups, it has downs, it has curves, it has slopes, जो भी है, it has everything in it, right? So
पूरी मूवी है.
पूरी मूवी है, सबकी life है, your life, you know, looks one that everybody wants to know about. So how would you describe the journey? And if there's this one piece of advice that you want to give to the younger Vaishnavi कि RIT में घुसने वाली है वो, तो समझाना है, सुन ये कर लियो ना तो better रहेगा. So what would be that one piece of advice?
That one piece of advice would be focus on academics. Okay. That's all. But because I mean, focusing on academics is very important. If let's say you want to go for masters at some point of your life, if you have like less than 8 CGPA, you might be at a disadvantage. So try to keep it above 8. That is all. But see, other than that, I feel that when I entered college, I actually did not want to go to a college for bachelor's in India. I wanted to go to US because I mean I was dumb. More than that, I was like, okay. I severely underestimated the amount of money that is required to go for bachelor's abroad. So that's why, like, by the time that I realized those things, I ended up at RIT, which is fine. It is 15 minutes away from my college, so I got to do everything from my home. So that was great. But I would say that I think a lot of the things that I did before college really impacted me. Because before college, I would not like to boast here, but yeah, like I went to New York before college started. Like I think 1 week before college started, and it was basically like, you know, you get to fly and then you're like, pinjade mein band kind of after, you know, like a week or something. But so basically it was like that experience like of going to New York. It was for a conference that I got an opportunity to attend because I did a competition in 12th grade and we stood second globally. So we were invited to that summit and it was free of cost. So I was like, theek hai yaar, karte hai. It is a good opportunity. So that is, I think that is one of the things that I did wrong. That is one of the things because of which I did a lot of things wrong in the beginning. Because in the beginning, I was very depressed. I was like, yaar, I don't deserve to be here. I was like, chee, what the hell? I don't want to be here. So that was my entire first semester. And then I like totally messed up my academics also on that. But I would say that I was also very arrogant in that year. Because I was like, these people, they've got nothing. Like they've got nothing on me. I'm the best basically here. But that got me nowhere, honestly. It was one of the competitions that I took part in college. It was like, you know, the freshers competitions that happen, you know, in the first year. And I won that competition, okay? And obviously. But when I won that competition, I realized that like most people hated me at that time because they were like, this person is so arrogant. Because I was very arrogant. I was like, when I look back, I'm like, oh God. But then like after that happened, I realized that I had this moment of self reflection that okay, maybe I need to dial it down, I need to think about stuff. And I used to blame it on the college for not providing opportunities and everything. So when I went to second year, I started a club in college, which was basically like a club called Hacken. It was a abbreviation for Hum Kisi Se Kam Nahi. So it was like the reason I was hacking, because it's like hacking and stuff. So we used to learn GitHub together. There was not a big vision to that club. We were like 41 people, and out of that 5 people showed up in the in-person meeting. So we all used to like Google and how to push code on GitHub, Google, and we used to learn through that. So I think that was one of my first experiences as a leader, trying to provide an opportunity to people. So I was like, okay, if I am so much better than people, if I feel that I'm so much better than people, then why am I not helping them, right? So I took it that way. And then eventually I started learning on my own as well. And I think a lot of it came from this altruistic sort of perspective that I had, that I wanted to help other people as well in the process of learning myself. If I am good, then I want to make people around me good as well. My whole perspective of this was that, okay, if I am in a bad situation, how do I make it better? Right? How do I do my part and make the best out of the situation? If I would have gone to BITS or IITs, I would not have become developer student club lead, or I would not have applied for GitHub Campus Expert. I would have not taken so much efforts to do better than my peers, and to help my peers basically, because I would have been like, yeah, I am in an IIT, so I don't care really. I don't have to work right out of college. I'll get placements. I just need to do DSA. That's all, right? I mean, nothing else I need to do. So yeah, like I think being in a disadvantaged situation really helped me, because I tried to look at the upside of it, because I got to learn a lot. Even though my dad used to say, "Yaar, tum to andho mein Kana Raja type ho gayi ho," but that is not true now. That is not true today, because there are people who are doing much better than me, and people who have gotten selected in Google Summer of Code and Google Summer of Docs, Season of Docs, and stuff like that. So and I have never been in those programs, so probably they might have done something better than me, right? So or maybe they might have worked harder than me. So, and I helped these people. So I feel that, okay, even though it is their achievement, they worked hard for it, but I sometimes feel that, okay, this is like this is the result of something that I did, right? This is something like this has I mean, whatever I did, there was a pincher of impact on that person's life, because that person would not have known about the opportunity if I had not set up the club, right? So I mean, it might seem a little bit narcissistic, but I mean, I would say that it really helped me see the whole point of building communities and helping other people, and then eventually also building myself in the process. So when I graduated from the GDSE program, I thought that I want to continue this kind of community work, and I want to help other people even now, even though I don't have the resources or something. So I applied for GitHub Campus Experts. I started Michi Spotlight. I started the newsletter just to do something, right? Just to do my part. So now, I mean, I think I do it better than anything else that I do. So I feel that that's why I continue doing it even now. Now I'm building communities for companies and other, people hired me to do it now. So yeah, I mean, that is essentially how the journey has been till now. I completely neglected academics. That was a very bad thing that I did. That should not be that should not be something that you should do. I would definitely recommend having a balance between academics and all this stuff. But yeah, in order to achieve something, you have to sacrifice something else, but don't sacrifice your academics. So that's all. Other than that, I would say there's nothing more that I did. I built my LinkedIn quite early on. When I go and see in the settings, when I started my LinkedIn profile, it was in 2016, which was when I was in 10th or 11th or something. So in 10th, because it was February 2016. So I learned, like the best thing that worked for me was having that kind of curiosity to explore more and more stuff. I used to look for conferences, look for opportunities that I can leverage and that will set me apart from my peers. I used to Google opportunities for students, 12th grade and high school or college first year students. So, I mean, not much results from that, but I think the one thing that really helped me was connecting with a lot of different people who referred me these opportunities, who referred me to programs and jobs and internships. So, yeah, like, I mean, I think I would say end of rant, but yeah, like that's all I did. And I think that really helped me. That those were some very highlight kind of things that helped me throughout the journey. So yeah.
For those answers, I think now we'll shift to the chat box so that we can take up the questions from the audience. Well, there's one from Shripad. How well established is Flutter in Android development industry as compared to Java or Kotlin?
I don't know. See, I don't know because like it depends on the company. Like it's not established or anything because Flutter is not used by big corporations or mid-sized corporations. Flutter is used usually by startups. Okay, so if you want to work at a startup, Flutter is the best bet. If you want to work at mid-sized companies or funded startups, you need to learn how to use React Native, which is another cross-platform framework that that can be used to develop Android and iOS applications. Other than that, Java and all, I think if you would look at LinkedIn as an application, it is built in Java because I know because I gave their interview, and they specified this that they have built everything in Java. And even when it comes to Kotlin, I think a lot less people use Kotlin than Java, obviously, because Java is very prolific in Android development. So I would suggest that if you like completely want to go into Android, then you go for native Android development in Java. But if you want to, let's say, go for getting placed at startups or mid-sized companies and funded startups and stuff that have been around for some time, go for React Native or cross-platform frameworks. And honestly, cross-platform frameworks also help you build iOS applications. So, I mean, if you're looking at mobile application development as a field, then yes, these cross-platform applications will help way more. But if you're just looking at Android, then Java is the best. So, yeah.
Okay. Pranav has one more question. He's saying that if we consider placement, should we apply for tier 2 companies, mostly product based, if the person is not from CS and IT?
Yeah, if you know DSA, you can apply anywhere. In the product based companies that are, I don't know what tier 2 companies are. I genuinely don't know. But if you're talking about FANG and Manga and whatnot, then yes, DSA is the holy grail and like Hail Mary and everything. So you can just go ahead, do that, and you'll be fine.
Okay, Shripad has one more question. Which has more weightage on the resume? Winning a college hackathon or being finalist in a good tech company organized hackathon?
Doesn't matter. No. Like you can't compare the two because even if a company is organizing a hackathon, it's the same, right? It's just that the company is organizing it. And like if you're winning a hackathon, that is definitely way better than being a finalist in any hackathon. So all hackathons are same only, okay? Be it let it be organized by DevFolio or some independent organization, or even if I organize a hackathon, let's say tomorrow, and if you happen to win that hackathon, that will have like equal weightage. But the one thing that matters most is that how many people were there in that hackathon, how many people submitted the project in that hackathon. Let's say if 200 people did that, numbers matter on resume. So if you were like second out of 250, obviously that is way better. If you were first out of 5 or something, that is not good at all. So yeah.
Okay, there's one more question from Anuja. She is asking about higher education. If we're planning for higher education, should we do it immediately if we're getting an opportunity, or we should get some industry experience, break of years, and then we should pursue higher education?
that depends on you and the kind of resources that you have. So if, let's say, you don't want to take a loan, and if you don't have the kind of money and the resources to invest in your higher education, I would suggest that wait for 2 years. If you want to do an MBA, which is basically an equivalent of I would say lighting a torch on a pile of money, if you are interested in doing an MBA, definitely they require you to have work experience of more than 2 years, usually 3 years. So I would say if you're going for an MBA, that would be a much better option. But if, let's say, you want to go for a master's, which is like an MS degree, so which is a STEM degree. STEM degree is usually a degree that allows you to work for additional 3 years or 36 months in optional practical training and curriculum practical training. You will know about these terms once you research a little bit more, but basically, like, these STEM degrees allow you to work for an additional 3 years so that you can find an opportunity and you can like work more. And there's a lot more ROI because these degrees are way less in cost. So if you want to do these kind of degrees, then I would definitely suggest you to do it immediately, because once you are getting a job offer, let's say you are doing a work experience for 2 years, you get out of sync with studying, right? You'll have to do the GRE, you'll have to take the TOEFL. So if you're doing it, TOEFL is only valid for 2 years. GRE is valid for 5 years, so you can give it at the end of your college. That is fine. But GRE and TOEFL, you'll have to give. And GRE, TOEFL, IELTS, these are the GMAT is also one of the exams. So if you are out of touch from studying, it will be very difficult for you to like sit down and study and just focus on one thing, because with the job, it will be very difficult to give these standardized tests. So I would suggest that if you want to go for masters, like STEM degrees, do it immediately, just after the college. And if you don't have the resources, let's say if you don't have money to go ahead, then I would suggest 2 years, stay in India, get a very good offer, earn a lot of money, and then go. Yeah.
Rao, are you here? Balatra is a UI UX executive of DSC, and he has some questions regarding community building.
Sure.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, don't call me ma'am, but yeah, I'm in college, so just a year away, maybe.
I just want to ask, like, how to build a community, not just community, but an active one, which will be helpful.
So this is something that we were taught during GitHub Campus Experts, that if you are building a community, you need to know what the vision of the community is. For me, for Michi Spotlight, the community's vision is to make sure that the students who are in tech in first, second, third, fourth year, whichever year, even if they're 50 years old and they are just very confused to navigate their career path, they can come here, they can talk to the community, they can seek advice, they can seek the required resources, they can talk to experts, mentors and stuff, and they'll be able to like navigate their path through in the tech ecosystem using the resources that we are providing them, right? So that is our vision, and we do everything that is relevant to our vision. And that is like the people who join our community are essentially the people who either relate to our struggle, which is relate to our vision, or who want to support us in bringing this vision to life, right? So these are the two types of people that you want on board in your community. If you want to learn more about community building, and so there's this book written by John O'Bacon. It's called People Powered. So John O'Bacon is the person who who made all of these GDSC programs and GitHub Campus Experts programs in these big companies. Okay, so like this person, like he has a lot of insights in community building. So you can learn through his one. I think he has one video as well, a 40-minute video on community building. So he highlights what are the different kinds of people that you need in your community to make it active. Because as a community organizer, you might have a team. They might not be available every single hour of the day to interact with community members. So there should be some, communication between the community members itself. So if, let's say, someone asks me a question on Michi Spotlight, there should be other people who can answer those questions. There should be other people who can write content for the newsletter, or or who want to just talk about stuff. Because as a single person, I might not have that kind of, like, even though I do have a broad experience, but I might not have the best experience in, let's say, a certain domain. So there should be experts and champions in certain communities who can support your cause and who can help you achieve your goals. So yeah, like, I mean, that is the essence of community building, essentially. And you can check that book out if you want. Yeah, like, and if you really are interested in building communities, there's this career opportunity as well, like a career role, like it's called developer advocacy or developer relations. And these are the people who are in charge of building communities and making sure that these communities prosper, and like usually around a development product, or maybe like an API or something like that. So, or maybe anything, it could be a course or something, anything for that matter. So just look into these things and you'll learn a lot. I'm just giving you some material to Google search, and you'll be able to understand it much better when you research it a little better. And I would say that if you really want to do community building, what I did was that I used to observe a lot of community builders and a lot of communities doing their stuff. And I used to note down things that they were doing wrong or they were doing right, so that, when I build my own community, I can like sort of find a way around these things and maybe do them better or something like that. Taking inspiration and collaborating with other communities is also very important, because let's say you right now your community only has like 200 people, and some other community has like 10,000 people. So you'd want that, okay, out of those 10,000 people, the people who relate with your vision, they can also like maybe learn about what your community is doing, so you can collaborate with other communities. That is the basic essence of community building. So I hope that you got something out of that.
That's was good.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question actually. So now that it's for the very first time that I'm handling a club and never had the leadership experience before, so I wanted to ask what different things can we do in our clubs, like in DSC, so that it would be beneficial for members of the club and for the students as well. Like, what can you suggest? Like, what more events should we
Can
do?
you repeat the question?
Like, in DSC,
I mean, I didn't hear it, so that's all. Like, just repeat it. You don't have to rephrase it or anything.
yeah, I wanted to ask in DSC what more things we can do so that it will be beneficial for members as well as other students. Like, this is for the very first time we are leading clubs, so we just want to make most out of it.
Right. So, see, the thing is that the best way to lead a community is that, all you can do from your end is provide the right resources, provide the right kind of workshops. But I think when it comes to workshops and all, that is not the only thing that you can do for your community. I used to think that, like, especially before starting my DSC club, I used to think that, okay, workshops and all, they definitely help, right? But after a point, I understood this, that you can't just do workshops. You can't just do 20 workshops in a year and then expect the community members to learn a lot of stuff. You need to have sessions where you can put them to practice, right? You can do pair programming sessions. You can obviously, like, you can bring in an expert speaker first, and then you can like ask them to talk about a certain topic. Let's say they teach React, right? But that your responsibility does not end once the workshop ends. You have to take it forward. You have to organize sessions where people can pitch in project ideas and then start building them. And then maybe in some ways they can learn about GitHub and open source and other things that are associated with that certain thing. When I did my DSC year, I was like, okay, I wanted to do something like, in a flow, that I did not want to bombard people with stuff at once. There are people with different levels of expertise, first of all, in a college. So you can't really expect everyone to go with the flow around that. So you can, I mean, I would recommend you to start with a kind of session that is like relevant to everyone, maybe something like this, which everyone can sort of relate to and learn from. And then basically specialize into areas. So if you have like a lot of DSCs, they make domain heads and stuff so that they can take ownership of those sessions. So do that and delegate your tasks. I think that is very important. As a leader, you need to make sure that everyone is doing something on your team, because I did that very badly. I used to do everything on my own, right from creating posters to posting it on social media, and then taking the session itself. I used to do everything. So that was, I mean, that may have helped me in some way, but I mean, I did those things because I knew how to do it. But let's say, I mean, that just made me a bad leader. And then I realized that, and then I started working on it. So yeah, I would suggest that if you want to be a good leader, you have to be a team player. You need to make sure that everyone in your team is learning something out of the experience. So yeah, that's there. And other than that, go beyond workshops and go beyond just small sessions, because I think a lot of people lose sight of communities. Communities are not just to take sessions and like just interact and stuff. It's also about implementing, right? If people are not building the projects, if they're not doing something tangible, then being a part of a community doesn't really matter, doesn't give them an edge, right? So you should make sure that people are able to do that. A lot of people think that, okay, I've attended this session, I know everything about it now. That's not true. Like when it comes to a session or a workshop, that is just an icebreaker for you to get exposed to that topic. If I'm trying to learn React, I can't do that in one session. So this is like for attendees as well, that when you are attending a session, make sure that you go with the mindset that I will learn something new today, but I won't learn it in the entirety. I'll have to do more research after that. I need to, like, if this interests me, that's why you should attend workshops, because those are the best way to explore different domains. So yeah, I would say just make sure that you give everyone the opportunity to explore different domains. And in certain domains, like if there's a high demand, you can go ahead and go provide them with specialized opportunities, like maybe like something like a web development, or in a brainstorming session, what kind of projects you should build, or what kind of projects you should put on your resume, and maybe like a project review session where people can showcase what they've built and get feedback on how they can do better, what other new features that they can add. So these kind of things you can do, which will have some tangible outputs. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it from that.
Okay, I guess we are done with all the questions that the chat had, right? And even our UI UX executive Rao. Personally, I got to learn a lot today, right? I got to know my mistakes that I am doing right now, and most importantly, one thing I have to say that, I think I feel that I am more motivated to do better in tech and development with the right approach. So we are coming to the end of this session. So I just want to say, Anuja, she's a DSC lead of BSITR, that she could come up and present the vote of thanks to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Vaishnavi, first of all, for attending the session and taking out the valuable time from your schedule. It was really amazing. Like, I personally had so many questions related to clubs, related to internships, and a lot more. I have always followed your profile on LinkedIn, and followed you on social media, taking inspiration from your public profile. And today I'm getting to learn something in person from you directly. Like, it's a very big deal for me. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, gained so much of insights, and I hope all the audiences are feeling the same. They must have learned something from the session today. Also, thank you so much for our hosts, like Ekagra, Nirmit, Siddhi, Nikita, Chetna, for hosting this event. They really did a very good job. And also design teams of both the clubs, and publicity team for marketing the event and designing the posters. So yeah, overall it was a really good session. Thank you so much for coming. Devang, you want to say anything else?
Honestly, okay, like there's a lot to say, like emotionally speaking. Like I get your profile approximately a year and a half ago, and like बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ पता नहीं था about this, and there's nobody to look forward to as a developer. Because around lockdown के time पे कुछ पता नहीं था, and this came up as इसने कितना कुछ किया है. And over the years, like वो एकलव्य moment था कि like just try to do stuff, like get into internships, try to get into clubs, and this I think you also have this knack, कुछ opportunity दिखे तो आप ले लेते हो पहले, and then you think about यार कैसे करना है इसको. The Richard Branson quote kind of. So like many things like today also when you're talking, a lot of things were like, yeah, so much has been inspired by this one person. So thank you so much for being that person to us, and hopefully for the others once the session is over. And thank you so much for being here. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to meet sometime later. Yeah. Thank you
for having me here and listening to me ramble for I think almost 2 hours. So yeah, I hope it's worth it. So yeah. All right.
I guess so. We are done with the session. Like I request participants to disconnect if they are done. Yeah. Bye bye, Vaishnavi.
Thanks for staying.
Thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Vaishnavi. Bye.
Bye.